Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. I have a very important breakdown covering some of my favorite fractals that are showing why this cycle is about to be so big in comparison with any of the prior bull markets. We have new ways for money to go on chain than ever before. We're seeing the ETF fueling billions of dollars worth of new buy volume in the market. And now as we're starting to see many of the altcoins picking up in pace, I think that we're about to be seeing one of the biggest breakouts of any of our prior bull markets. And I want to make sure that you guys are prepared and know exactly how to play this market moving forward from here. If at any point you find any value in this video, please do me a favor, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you guys do want to follow any of my portfolio, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Right off the bat, guys, we've seen a massive buyback inside of Bitcoin. Bitcoin made this big capitulation, but we ended up getting a bullish weekly close. This ended up closing as a bullish pin hammer candle, and I do believe that this is the early sign that we could be seeing the next big reversal setting in. Now, a lot of the reason why I think Bitcoin's going to do well has everything to do with the S&P 500. Bitcoin has a 90% correlation to the stock market, and with this stock market correlation, the stock market recently broke out of new all-time highs, and this was really the first sort of retest that we had, and we didn't even come all the way back down to retest the prior all-time highs. We got bought up really quickly, and we're seeing a lot of strength right now in the S&P 500, which I do believe is going to end up fueling Bitcoin to go higher. We can come out to a weekly time frame, and we can see that the stock market topped at the exact same time Bitcoin did, and it was really the stock market topping that fueled Bitcoin's bear market. Now, the stock market started to break out and really went on this big run, and Bitcoin followed it, guys. Bitcoin has never been at this quick of a pace to begin a new cycle. Sitting at new all-time highs this fast, it's really never been done before. And I think a lot of that is because we have the ETF, we have new money that's never really had ways to buy Bitcoin. And with Bitcoin being such a popular asset, I honestly think that we're going to see a lot of the same playing out in this cycle once again. We're currently about 910 days from our prior all-time high of the last cycle to us right now. This one was about 1100, just under 1100 days over here. So we're getting closer to those same sort of time frames, but we're still a little bit, quicker pace. To me, when I'm looking at Bitcoin, I'm understanding that this is a different cycle. This is a completely new cycle that we've never seen before because we haven't had an ETF. We haven't had real institutional money to come in and buy Bitcoin. And when we're comparing it into prior cycles, Bitcoin had very little development. It was a lot of retail driven hype. You had smart money that was mainly accumulating. But in my opinion, now that we're at the point of the ETF approval, now that we're at the point of the institutions here accumulating billions of dollars of new Bitcoin, this is really showing that, we're front running for a reason, and it's not random. It's because there's new money coming into the market that is way more sizable volume than ever before, and I think that's going to fuel a lot more of a parabolic cycle. Now guys, we can come back and look in the last cycle, and we can see with Bitcoin, Bitcoin had this big parabolic move, right? Went to a new all-time high, things were super solid, but it wasn't nearly as big as some of the prior cycles. Even in 2017, this one was an absolutely massive cycle. And I do think that this cycle is going to be a lot more along those same trajectories as what we saw in 2016 and 2017. And a lot of our price action has actually been pretty similar. Regardless of what our consolidation takes right here, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin just start going into this new all-time high, really fueled by the stock market doing the same. If the stock market's going to do this, if this is really our first breakout in a price discovery, and with Bitcoin having such a strong correlation to that price, I think that with the next move coming, this is going to be a very parabolic move for this S&P 500. We just got our first breakout and retest of new all-time highs. So going into another new all-time high after is really true price discovery. And I think that that's where we're going to see a lot more upside potential setting in here for Bitcoin. And when we're looking over here, one of my favorite things to share with you guys, I like teaching you guys stuff because I think that that's how you make the most money. And I wanted to teach you guys something because I have seen a lot of people really freaking out about this dip. This dip has been a lot scarier for most people than any of the prior dips up to this point. They're all pretty scary in comparison. Like I remember people freaking out here, but truthfully, this dip was a little bit more powerful. And I think that this is a sign that we're getting to that emotional point of the cycle. Now, when we're looking at the total market cap of crypto, I always tell you guys that it's important to watch this chart because when we're looking at level to level, we're going to end up seeing it follow a little bit better consistency than dollar pairs will. So when I'm looking at this, at the end of the day, all we really did was consolidate right back on top of this prior lower high. Because remember, when we started our cycle top in our bear market, this was our first lower high of the bear market, and it was at the top of that lower high that we've been holding as support. So even though we temporarily had a wicks below that, it still got bought back up. And so the market could even retest this level again before breaking back bullish. I wouldn't be surprised. But the big thing is, generally speaking, when we see this big of a sell-off, when we're looking at a 24, 25% pullback here, that's easily enough for a reversal. We haven't seen any sort of major pullback into the cycle. All of them have been about the same. This one was 22. This one was about 20%. The ETF sell-off was about... So up to this point, we've seen the exact same size of each and one of these pullbacks. This one being 25% was a little bit bigger than the other ones, and I think that that's really why we've seen such... I think that that's why we've seen so many people freaking out on Twitter. Now, what we're seeing in this cycle has been the dips getting bought up at a quicker pace than ever before. You know, instead of 30 and 40% pullbacks, we're only seeing, 20% pullbacks, 25% pullbacks. And I do think that that's an early sign that, we just have a lot more buy support, guys, and we can't ignore these signals. We can't ignore these signs. If this is going to be, new all-time highs for the stock market, gold is currently sitting into price discovery. If we come over and look at the price of gold, gold is also sitting into price discovery after breaking out of this big cup and handle formation. So realistically, we're about to see a huge markup across the board on all of the markets. And Bitcoin, I think, is only just, right behind the stock market, right behind gold, before we do the exact same sort of thing. Every one of these dips getting smaller is a sign that there's more buy support. And we don't want to be really messing around too much, understanding that. Now, guys, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is going to teach you a lot about the bear market bottoms. And if you guys understand this pattern, you're going to make tons of money inside of the cycles. It's a really easy to identify pattern, and we've seen each one of our cycles do it. Coming over here and looking at this chart, this is what's going to be called Wyckoff, and you're going to look at the Wyckoff accumulation being what's drawn inside of this visual, and then we can also look at the distribution. It's just the same thing inverted. This is what you're going to see at cycle tops. This is what you're going to see at cycle bottoms, and this is a pattern that we've seen play out in all of our bear market bottoms up to this point. The first schematic I want to talk to you guys about is basically just this one right here. So if we come over here, this will give you guys an exact visual representation of what a Wyckoff schematic does. Now, there's a few different types of schematics. There's a Wyckoff 1, there's a Wyckoff 2. Each one of these cycles made its own sort of thing, and I wanted to go through and talk about them. The total market cap of crypto ended up following the Wyckoff accumulation schematic number 2, where we end up seeing this bear market capitulation, rally up into a resistance, make a secondary spring where you're kind of just retesting this, and then you go back up once again to retest that range high before you make that breakout. Every single one of our bear markets for Bitcoin, for the altcoins, the total market cap, they've always followed some type of variant of this pattern. And I think that as long as you guys understand how these work, you're going to understand not only how to gauge cycle tops, but you're going to understand how to buy into the bear market bottoms as well. When there were so many people freaking out about what we were seeing back down at this bear market low, I was accumulating because I understood the bigger picture, because I've been following these sort of schematics for a long time. We can come into each one of these cycles and see the same sort of similarities right here. We can draw this one. This one is also with the total altcoin market cap. This one was also a Wyckoff schematic too. And you could argue that this one even followed to a better consistency than the last one I just shared with you. But once again, guys, had you have just known this basic pattern, all I've done was copy and pasted a schematic I pulled from Google, because markets follow these all the time. And with crypto being so emotional, so volatile, we see them follow it every single one of the bear markets. And that's been a way that I've made a lot of money, just understanding how these have been able to work in the market. And where we're at right now, seeing how we've already broken out, we've cleared these sort of range highs. This is right at the moment of time before we go into price discovery. So regardless of which one follows it a little bit closer than the other, we can see that this is exactly how the market is playing out and has been playing out for years and years. I can share with you guys the same fractals over the course of prior cycles that have done these exact same sort of setups. Now, the only one that I would say is a little bit different, you could argue, is this one right here. Notice here how we followed a low, a high, lower low, lower high, and then we ended up making a third lower low as well. The same thing happened inside of this recent cycle. The only difference is our third lower low wasn't quite as volatile, but once again, we still followed the same sort of events. It's not hard to tell that this is the same sort of setup, and I think as long as you guys are able to identify these sort of patterns, it's going to set you up for a lot better success than the average person, because it doesn't matter which one of these charts we've looked at. Every single one of these followed them. And we can even draw this same pattern coming all the way back into the last cycle as well. And even if we came back all the way into our last cycle, we saw the same sort of thing. High, bounce, lower high, and then this would have been the spring, the third sort of capitulation. So we've seen the same similarities play out in each one of these cycles. And what happened after we broke out of the range high right here, That was before we went into price discovery. And all we've seen up to this point is, pretty much the exact same thing. It was its own version of a Wyckoff. This is, back in the last cycle, was a different version of the Wyckoff. This is, once again, its own version of the Wyckoff. We broke out, retested it, and now we're currently just getting that next sort of pullback. Like, everybody has another opportunity of jumping back down in here, getting a discounted price on crypto, because I'm not necessarily leaning towards the fact we're going to have another one of these big sell-offs. I think we're bullish. I think that the bottom is most likely in. We're going to see a breakout, and then the next leg up is going to be taking place. And so I wanted to confirm with you guys that as we're seeing some of the more bullish chart patterns I've ever seen across the board in all of investing, it doesn't really matter. The fact that crypto is much more volatile, the fact that it follows these sort of fractals and schematics a little bit more accordingly than some of these other charts like the stock market, it gives me a lot of confidence because we can see in real time how they're playing out. And not only how they're playing out now, but how they have played out in prior cycles. We can come all the way back down and even look, at this cycle and see a lot of the same sort of similarities. Capitulation, retest, spring, and then we do the exact same sort of reversal. And, once we end up clearing above those range highs, that's what sets us in for that big parabolic move. And we obviously know how massive that 2017 altcoin run was. And I wouldn't be surprised if this cycle ends up being a lot more of the same sort of consistency. Because our last cycle was a lot smaller, right? It was much smaller in comparison with prior cycles. And a lot of that had to do with the over-leveraged players that were hyping up the market. We also had the middle of the pandemic. There just wasn't the same economic factors. And I think that with our current cycle today, we're following a long path for us to have that big parabolic move, another 2017 type of bull run. We're looking at each one of these charts. We're seeing Bitcoin front-running prior cycles. And we've talked a little bit about what that means. Are we going to see an early cycle top, maybe a cycle top at the end of this year to the early part of 2025? Or is this just a more parabolic 4-year cycle where we're going to just follow a normal 3-year bull market where we top sometime at the end of 2025 over in here, but it just ends up being much more parabolic in nature? I'm not surprised if that's going to be the case because we're going to be seeing all of these cycles playing out, and as they're just reversing, as Bitcoin's sitting at this new all-time high, as we have this institutional money, all of our other major indexes, gold is sitting in new all-time highs, the stock market is sitting into new all-time highs, being the S&P 500, with Bitcoin having such a major correlation in price to this, I just have a lot of confidence that we're going to end up seeing a lot of the same patterns repeated once more. All this has been is a repeat of the same bear market bottoms I've always seen play out. And now that we're at this point of reversing, I kind of think that this is really our last big correction that we're going to see before we get that next move into new all-time highs. Bitcoin's already at new all-time highs, about to go into price discovery. Same thing with the stock market, but really we're kind of waiting on what these altcoins are going to do. And I think that this is the moment in time where the altcoins are going to start picking up in pace and make people a lot of profit in the process. There is a lot of profit that is going to go around this cycle. It's really nothing that we haven't seen up to this point. It's all of the exact same sort of accumulation patterns playing out, regardless of which schematic of Wyckoff this is. They're all the same sort of setup, and they're all showing reversions. They're all showing that we've broken out of these bear market bottoms, and we're basically at the first major sell-off since that major breakout. So I honestly think that the next leg up is going to be very parabolic in nature, It might take a little bit before we get there, but it's going to take off in a very big way, and I think it's going to catch people by surprise. And this is the moment of time where I've seen a lot of people freaking out. I've seen a lot of people really wondering what to do. Should they sell? Should they look to get into something else, change up their positions? And at the end of the day, guys, a lot of the times, right when we look to do those sort of things, right when we make those emotional decisions and moves, it's right before we make a very big move inside of Bitcoin. And because we've already seen the sell-off to the downside, I think the next move is going to be taking us into a major breakout into new all-time highs. So as long as we're prepared for that, as long as we have our capital ready, positioned, and prepared, we're going to make a lot of money in that process. And I think that this is the one cycle where as long as you're prepared, as long as you're ready, you're going to make a life-changing amount of wealth, because the last cycle was small in comparison. I honestly think that this thing is going to behave a lot more like 2017 did. When we're looking at a parabolic cycle, this thing was absolutely massive. And when we're looking at how high it went up, talking about from that same Wyckoff schematic, when we're looking at how high it went up, don't be surprised if we end up seeing a lot of the same sort of price action once again going into this next cycle. A very, very parabolic type of move. just makes this thing look absolutely teeny tiny, as maybe this thing peaks at like 20 trillion in market cap, total market cap of crypto. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, guys. We've got a lot of money going around. We've got a lot of hype, a lot of new technology, and I think that this is the one cycle where if you've got money prepared, we're going to be able to do really well, and the only thing that we should do right now is hold. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you did find value, please do me a favor, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. If you guys do want to see how I'm investing my portfolio, any altcoins I'm going to be trading as we're getting into this move, I just posted a bunch of new signals in my group. A lot of those I think are going to be looking like massive moves. One of them had a target of 91x, so you know, this is the point of the cycle where we're about to make some significant gains, and I'd love to have you guys a part of the group. So anybody that wants to join, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.